At my birthday party, my sister smirked. Maybe next year you'll actually have something to celebrate while mocking my minimum wage job. So I blew out the candles and said, doesn't have to be next year, you'll find out soon enough. It started with a card. One of those cheap ones you find in the clearance bin at a gas station. Probably meant as a joke between coworkers or something you'd give ironically to a roommate who failed an exam. But this one wasn't from a stranger or a classmate. It was from my family. I'm 24, and I haven't celebrated my birthday with them since. The card read in bold Comic Sans with a cartoon of a sad clown holding a deflated balloon. At least you tried. Inside, in my dad's handwriting, blocky and slightly crooked, he'd written, "You gave it a shot, kiddo." Then under that, in various pens, my mom, my sister Jenna, and my younger brother Liam all signed their names like it was some big joke. A family project. I remember reading it while standing in our living room surrounded by the forced decorations they had lazily put up that morning. One limp banner that read "Happy Day," and a few streamers drooping sadly from the ceiling fan, like they'd given up halfway through. There was no cake, just an empty stand with candles sticking out of it like a taunt. And the worst part, the laughter, that sharp, familiar laughter that always started with Jenna, like she was the cue card in a sitcom audience. Then Liam joined in, then Mom. Dad chuckled too, but his was more of a low grunt, like he wasn't really in it but didn't want to be left out. I stood there holding the card in one hand, candles flickering on a ghost cake in front of me, their light catching in my eyes, while Jenna lifted her phone and said, "Smile, Mason. Say minimum wage." That got another round of laughs. I smiled. I posed. I played along because that's what I always did. I've always been the one in the background, the gentle one. As Mom liked to say, the emotional support son. Never the golden child. That was Jenna, who got straight as in a full scholarship to college. Never the prodigy. That was Liam, the soccer star, who'd already been scouted for regional teams by age 16. I was the kid who dropped out of community college after 2 semesters, tried to start a screen printing business that failed within a year, and now worked at a used bookstore that barely kept the lights on. I wasn't bitter, not at first. I accepted my role. Every family has one right, the one they tease, the one they poke fun at because he can take a joke. But something about that birthday hit different. Maybe it was the way Mom didn't even pretend to act like it was a surprise this year. Maybe it was the way Liam kept glancing at his phone during the party, probably texting his girlfriend about how dumb it all was. Or maybe it was how Jenna, who had recently landed a job at a law firm downtown, looked me dead in the eye and said, "Maybe next year you'll actually have something to celebrate." I didn't even respond, just blew out the candles on air. Literally nothing on the stand, not even a cupcake. Jenna clapped sarcastically. Dad said, "Make-a-wish sport," like that wasn't the saddest joke of all. I went through the motions as usual, took the photo, held up the card, pretended it was all fine, but inside, something snapped. I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, that was the exact moment I started packing up mentally. Not just from the party, from the family dynamic that I'd accepted for far too long. The next morning, I woke up before anyone else and sat in my car for almost an hour with the keys in my hand. It was my old Corolla, the one I'd bought with my own money 3 years ago. The AC barely worked. The upholstery smelled faintly of coffee and pine air freshener, and the left speaker crackled like firewood. But it was mine. Every dollar, every mile, every scratched bumper was mine. That meant something, maybe more than it should have. I didn't leave right then, but the idea had taken root. I started watching them more closely over the next few days, listening, observing. The way Mom would change the subject when I talked about trying to write again. How Liam laughed when I said I was thinking of maybe going back to school. How Jenna rolled her eyes when I said I wanted to try painting again. Just a hobby, something creative. They didn't say no, they didn't have to. Their faces did all the talking, that quiet smirk of doubt. That performative patience, like I was a child trying to explain why the sky was purple. It wasn't always like this. I mean, growing up, we weren't exactly the Brady Bunch, but there were good moments. Dad teaching me how to change a tire. Mom bringing me soup when I had strep. Jenna helping me make a PowerPoint in high school. Liam giving me one of his old hoodies when mine got ruined in the ring. But somewhere along the way, that warmth turned into something colder, more transactional. If you weren't winning, achieving, performing, you were background noise. Still, I stayed. I told myself I had to. Rent was insane. And I didn't want to burden my friend Alex again. He'd already let me crash on his couch for 2 months last year. Plus, there was a small part of me that still wanted their approval, like a dog chasing after a car. It knows it'll never catch. 2 weeks passed. I smiled through dinners, nodded during small talk, I played my role like a pro, but each night I spent hours scrolling apartments in nearby cities, researching part-time jobs, looking up night classes. I even pulled out an old sketchbook and started doodling again. Nothing fancy, just charcoal lines the way I used to. Something about putting marks on paper grounded me, reminded me I was real, not just a prop in their sitcom. Then came the turning point. It was a Sunday. Jenna had come over for brunch. She didn't live with us anymore, obviously. She had a downtown condo with modern lighting and a doorman who knew her by name. She brought her new boyfriend Nick, a guy with sleeve tattoos, and that confident smirk of someone who'd never been told no in his life. We all sat at the table, Mom making her famous blueberry pancakes, Dad grumbling about syrup brands, Liam on his phone as usual. Somehow the topic turned to me. Jenna had asked casually, "So Mason, what are you doing these days?" Not mean, not sharp, just casual. But I knew that tone. It was bait. The same tone you'd use when asking a toddler what they want to be when they grow up. I replied evenly. "Still working at the bookstore. Might take some online courses." Nick snorted. "That sounds fun." Jenna tilted her head. Mocked curiosity painted on her face. "What kind of courses? Graphic design? Maybe something creative?" I said, already regretting it. "Graphic design?" Liam chimed in, finally looking up. "Isn't that like making logos and stuff?" I nodded, among other things. Dad chuckled. "Didn't you try that already with those t-shirts?" "They were screen-printed designs," I corrected. Nick leaned back, arms crossed. "Yeah, but those didn't sell right." Mom tried to change the subject. Bless her, but it was too late. The jabs had started. Jenna, maybe just get something stable, like an admin job or something. "No shame in that, Liam. Yeah, like filing papers or answering phones. You'd probably be good at that." I swallowed hard, smiled. "Thanks for the vote of confidence." Nick grinned. "Hey, at least you tried right." And that was it. That stupid phrase again. That card, that joke, that moment they all thought was harmless and hilarious. I stood up. Not abruptly, not angrily, just calmly. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed my keys, and walked right out the front door. No speech, no scene, no drama, just gone. I stayed with Alex that night and the next, told him everything. He didn't say much, just handed me a spare blanket and said, "Took you long enough? That was 2 weeks ago. I haven't spoken to my parents since. I haven't replied to Liam's texts. Haven't liked any of Jenna's Instagram posts. I've been quiet, planning, watching." Then this morning I got a message. Just one line from Liam. "Mom's been crying every night. Just come back." I stared at it for a long time, and then I smiled. I didn't respond to Liam's message. I left it on read. Maybe that sounds cold, but after everything, I wasn't ready to be. Guilt tripped back into my role as the family punchline. I'd spent years accepting scraps of affection wrapped in passive-aggressive jokes, thinking it was love just delivered badly. But the moment I walked out of that house, something shifted. And not just in them, because apparently me leaving threw the entire family into some melodramatic tailspin, but in me, I started seeing it all differently. Every offhand comment, every joke, every side, and Jenna threw me across the dinner table, and suddenly it didn't feel like teasing anymore. It felt like cruelty with a smile. Alex let me stay in his guest room. Well, technically, it was a storage room with a futon and a tower of shoeboxes, but it was warm, quiet, and mine. No sarcasm, no judgment, just space to think. The first week was peaceful. I helped Alex out with some side work. He did freelance photography and needed help organizing a massive backlog of files. It was tedious but oddly satisfying. I cooked dinner a few nights, got back into sketching, found myself sleeping deeper than I had in years. I didn't miss home, not one bit. But my phone kept buzzing, mostly from Liam. A few messages from Mom, short ones like, "We miss you," or "Hope you're okay." But not a single call, not one voice that said, "We're sorry." And that told me everything. Then Jenna messaged. It was a voice note, of course. She always preferred those, easier to perform when you couldn't be interrupted. "Hey," she said, her voice all business. "So I talked to Mom. She's a wreck. She's been crying. She didn't mean for the birthday thing to be like mean. It was supposed to be funny, Mason. You've always had a sense of humor. You're being kind of dramatic about this. Just come home, okay? You're making it way bigger than it needs to be." I listened to it twice and laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, but because it was textbook. No apology, no accountability. Just a firm reminder that if I had a problem with how I was treated, I was the problem. That was always Jenna's specialty. She could stab you with a smile and then hand you a towel to clean up your own blood. I didn't reply, but I watched their moves. Jenna posted a photo later that day. Her and Nick at some rooftop bar captioned "Family First." Liam posted a clip from his soccer practice with the song "Stronger" playing over it, like he was the protagonist in a Nike commercial. And Mom. She posted an old family photo, one of those perfectly framed moments from a vacation we took to Colorado when I was 15. All of us standing in front of a mountain arm in arm. The caption just said, "Miss these days," and I wasn't in the photo. I remembered that trip vividly. I was the one taking the picture. The next few days were oddly quiet. I thought maybe they'd finally given up. But then Friday hit. I was in the middle of helping Alex sort through gear when my phone rang. Not a message, an actual call. "Dad?" I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the screen for a full 10 seconds before I finally answered. "Hey," I said flatly. There was a pause. Then, "Hey, kiddo?" His voice was deep, like he'd been smoking again. "You good?" "I'm fine. Your mom's been worried. She has a phone. She says you won't answer." I didn't reply. He sighed. "Look, I know the birthday thing. Maybe it went too far. Your mom told me about the card." I waited. I didn't mean for it to be hurtful. Just, I don't know. We were joking around. We didn't think you'd take it so seriously. Another pause. He was waiting for me to say something. I didn't. Anyway, he continued. "Jenna's got something going on next week. Big deal at the firm. She wanted the family there. Said it would mean a lot if you showed up." There it was. It wasn't about me. It never was. They didn't want me back. They wanted the image of me back for a photo for appearances. "I've got work." I said. "You sure?" "Yeah, I'm sure." Dad was quiet for a second, then said, "All right, let me know if you change your mind." And that was it. A few days later, Alex and I were out at a coffee shop when I saw it. Jenna's big event. It was all over her Instagram, the firm's annual gala. Black tie, city skyline in the background. Everyone in tailored suits and champagne dresses. Jenna stood at the center, flanked by Mom and Dad smiling like the queen of the world. Liam stood behind them, awkward in a blazer that didn't quite fit. And there in the corner of the photo was me, or at least someone pretending to be me. They had asked Alex once before to pose for something years back when they needed family photos for a Christmas card, and I'd missed the shoot because I was working overtime at the bookstore. He'd laughed about it then, joking that my family was weird. But this time, they hadn't asked him. This time it wasn't even him. It was Nick, Jenna's boyfriend, in a gray suit, standing just close enough to look like part of the family. They replaced me. I stared at the photo for a long time. My stomach dropped in this slow, cold way, like stepping into a lake in October. Alex leaned over, saw the look on my face, and asked, "What happened?" I showed him the post. He blinked. "That's Nick, right?" "Yeah. They put Nick in your spot." I nodded. Alex exhaled slowly. "That's messed up." "No, it was calculated because I knew Jenna. I knew her need for control, for optics, for having the perfect narrative. Mason, the dropout brother who worked retail and lived like a ghost, didn't fit her brand. Nick, the confident lawyer with the nice watch and the LinkedIn headshot, did. And my parents, they just let it happen. That night, I sat in the guest room and stared at the ceiling. Everything felt heavy, like a weight had settled into my chest and refused to move. I wasn't just angry. I was hurt deeply. The kind of hurt that doesn't come from a single moment, but from 100 small ones stacked on top of each other until they crush you. The years of being the afterthought. That he's just figuring things out, son. The joke. I thought about the times I'd stayed home to help Mom when she was sick. The times I drove Liam to soccer tournaments across state lines. The time I bailed Jenna out when her car broke down in college. Driving 3 hours with a gas can and jumper cables. None of it mattered. Not when it came to the image. Not when it came to her image. The next morning, I got a text from Jenna. "Hey, saw you didn't come. We missed you." Nick stepped in. "Hope that's okay. No apology." Just that smug tone again, that I win energy she always carried. And something in me flipped. I wasn't going back. Not to that, not to being edited out of my own life. That day I took a walk. No music, no distractions, just me and my thoughts. And by the time I got back, I knew exactly what I needed to do. They had made a mistake, a big one. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking for their approval. I was looking for closure and maybe a little revenge. The day after Jenna's message, I deleted Instagram. Not out of spite, just clarity. I'd been staring at the same performative highlight reel for years. Smiling family photos that cropped out reality shiny achievements with captions about hard work and blessings inside jokes that never included me. I realized I didn't need to see it anymore. I didn't want to. I was done watching my own life from the outside. If I was going to start over, I needed to stop looking back. That wasn't easy, by the way. Starting over never is, especially when you don't have much. Alex, true to his word, let me stay as long as I needed. But I started feeling like a squatter by week 3. The guest room was barely wider than the futon, and I could hear every faucet and floorboard creak in the apartment, but it was still the most peace I'd had in years. Still, I couldn't ignore that quiet voice in the back of my head that whispered, "Don't overstay. Don't become a burden." So I found a job. Not the dream one, just a job. A local art supply store needed someone part-time, stocking shelves, helping customers, restocking sketchbooks, charcoal paintbrushes. The pay wasn't amazing, but it was better than the bookstore, and it came with a discount. That part mattered more than I admitted. I remember my first shift. I was in the back unpacking a box of oil paints when I saw it. A little note scribbled in Sharpie on the cardboard. "This color will save someone's soul. Don't let it dry out." I laughed. I still don't know who wrote it. Probably some bored employee with a poetic streak, but I cut that part of the box out and taped it above my bed that night. It felt weirdly personal, like the universe tapping me on the shoulder. In the evenings, I sketched. Not for money, not for school, just for me. I stopped trying to make marketable designs and started drawing what I actually saw. People in cafes. The old woman with the giant tote bag who rode the bus every day. The overgrown alley behind Alex's building where weeds cracked through the concrete. Nothing polished, just real. I filled up 3 sketchbooks in a month. It felt like breathing again after being underwater too long. I also started running. Not far at first, just a few blocks, but the rhythm helped. It gave my thoughts a place to go. I wasn't running from anything, just through things. Pain, confusion, memories. Every step made them quieter. Alex noticed. He never said anything directly, but I caught him watching me, sometimes smiling when I came back from a run drenched in sweat, nodding quietly when I'd show him a new drawing. He knew he could see it, the rebuilding. But life wasn't suddenly perfect. There were still bad days, like the day I saw my old manager from the bookstore walk into the art shop. He didn't recognize me at first, but when he did, his eyes lit up. "Mason, hey, didn't know you left." I shrugged. Needed a change. He nodded. "Makes sense. Hey, listen, we've got a part-time opening again if you want to come back." I smiled politely and said I'd think about it, but I didn't think about it. Not once. I didn't want to go back to the fluorescent lights and dusty corners and customers arguing over $1.99 bookmarks. I didn't want to go back to a version of myself that didn't know how to leave. Still, that night, I sat in the park behind the shop and cried. Not because I missed the bookstore, but because I realized how far I'd come. I hadn't even noticed. I'd been so focused on surviving that I hadn't realized I was actually living again. That hit harder than I expected. The fall had already happened. This was the rise. 1 week later, something strange happened. My sketches started getting noticed. I'd been pinning a few up on the community board at the shop, mostly to fill space, honestly, but customers started asking about them. A woman came in one day, pointed to a charcoal sketch I did of a guy playing the saxophone on the subway and said, "How much for this?" I blinked. "It's not for sale." She smiled. "It should be." That night, Alex helped me set up a small online portfolio. Nothing fancy, just a few high-res scans, a short bio, a PayPal link. We called it Lines Between after a note I'd scribbled in one of my drawings. Life happens in the lines between what you meant and what you said. I didn't expect much, but within 2 weeks, I sold 3 prints. It wasn't about the money, it was about being seen. Not through the lens of a family name or a job title, just seen. Mason, the guy who sketches people when they're not looking. Mason, the guy who finds poetry in fire escapes and cracked sidewalks. Mason, the guy who finally believed he had something to offer. Around the same time, I got an email from a local gallery. Someone had seen my prints online, probably one of the customers from the shop, and passed along my name. They were putting together a community exhibition featuring local artists. No fees, no commissions, just a chance to show your work. They invited me to participate. I read the email twice before I believed it. I didn't tell anyone right away, not even Alex. I just replied yes and started choosing pieces. I wasn't aiming to impress anyone, I just wanted to tell the truth visually at least. A week later, I ran into Liam. Total accident. I was walking out of the grocery store, arms full of oranges and protein bars, when I heard someone shout my name. Mason. I turned and there he was. He looked taller, somehow more tired too. He was wearing his team hoodie, but his face didn't carry that usual teenage smugness. Just something softer. I thought that was you, he said, jogging up. Hey, I said cautiously. You haven't answered my texts. I know. He shoved his hands in his hoodie pocket. Mom's still upset. I didn't say anything. He shifted awkwardly. I'm not here to guilt trip you. I don't know. Wanted to see how you were doing. I'm doing okay, I said. Better, actually. That's good. He paused, then added, You look different. I smirked in a bad way. No, just calmer. We stood in silence for a second, then he said, They really messed up. Huh? I blinked. He looked down at the pavement. The birthday, the card, all of it. I don't know why I laughed. It wasn't funny. It was mean. I studied him. He looked genuinely remorseful, not rehearsed, not coaxed, just raw. You followed their lead, I said. We all do that sometimes. I don't want it anymore, he muttered. Jenna is the worst about it. She always sets the tone. Dad just co-signs it. And Mom? He trailed off. She stays quiet. Yeah, I exhaled. I know. He looked up at me, eyes glassy. You think you'll ever come back to the house? Yeah. I looked away. I don't know. Not like before. He nodded slowly. I miss you. That hit harder than I expected. I didn't know what to say, so I just said, I miss you too. We didn't hug or anything. Just stood there for another minute before I told him I had to get going. But I watched him walk away for a long time. That night I told Alex everything about the gallery, about Liam, about how I wasn't sure what I felt anymore. Alex smiled. That means you're healing. Healing sucks. He laughed. Yeah, but you're doing it anyway. I didn't respond. Just sat there with a bowl of cereal and the quiet hum of traffic outside the window. 2 days later, the gallery opened. It wasn't a big event. No red carpet, no spotlights, just a handful of local artists, a rented space, and a table with cheap wine and crackers. But when I walked in and saw my pieces hanging on the wall, real framed, lit by soft bulbs, I felt something loosen in my chest, like I'd been holding my breath for years without realizing it. People stopped to look, some lingered. One woman cried in front of a sketch I did of a man sitting alone in a laundromat. She asked me what it meant. I told her I didn't know, that it just felt true. She nodded. That's exactly it. And then she hugged me. Later that night, after the show ended, I got a message. Not from Jenna, not from Mom, from Dad. Just 3 words. We saw it, that was all. But I knew what it meant. I didn't reply. Not yet. Because the story wasn't finished. Not until they saw the whole picture. The gallery show changed something. Not just in me, but in them. After Dad's message, I half expected a flood of texts, or maybe even a call, but nothing came. Just those 3 words. We saw it. No congratulations, no apology, no follow-up. And weirdly, that silence told me everything. It meant they'd finally noticed I existed outside of their narrative, that I had built something without them. And now they didn't know how to react. Maybe they were waiting for me to crawl back to be grateful that they noticed. But I wasn't that guy anymore. I was done performing for people who only watched when I failed. And still, I wasn't angry. Not exactly. What I felt now was colder, cleaner focused, like I'd been standing in the fog for years. And now, I could finally see the road ahead. And I knew exactly where it led. I didn't want them to hurt. That would be too easy. I wanted them to understand. I wanted them to see not just me, but everything they'd been blind to. All the moments they'd brushed off, all the words they never said, all the choices that chipped away at me while they called it love. I wanted them to feel that slow burn of realization. That quiet, creeping shame when the mirror finally reflects something you don't like. But I also knew they'd never get there on their own. So I decided to help them. The plan came together slowly, part instinct, part strategy. I didn't want drama. I didn't want a public confrontation. I wanted something more subtle, more permanent. And I wasn't doing it alone. It started with Alex, of course. He was the first person I led into the plan. We were sitting on the fire escape of his apartment one night, passing a cheap bottle of wine between us. When I said, I think I'm going to throw a show. My own show. Not the gallery stuff, just mine. He raised an eyebrow like a solo exhibit. Yeah. Bigger, more curated, personal, a story. Okay, he said slowly. And you want them to come, I want them to see. Really see everything. Alex sipped the wine, then nodded. So a trap, but make it classy. I grinned. Exactly. We started planning that night. The idea was simple. An art exhibit, but not just sketches or paintings. A timeline, a memoir in graphite and ink, a walkthrough of my life. The highs, the lows, the quiet pain. Each piece would be paired with a small note handwritten. Some would be direct quotes, others would be unspoken thoughts, some would just be dates circled in red. I didn't want it to be about blame, I wanted it to be true. Over the next month, I worked like a man possessed. I stopped taking extra shifts at the art shop. I poured every waking hour into sketching, planning, writing. I filled notebooks with moments I'd buried. My 18th birthday when Mom forgot to pick me up from school and laughed when I walked home in the rain. The time Dad told me, "You're not a failure. You're just not built for success." The dinner when Jenna announced her job offer and everyone toasted while my promotion at the bookstore got a "That's nice, Mason." I recreated them all visually, symbolically, literally in some cases. One piece was a child's chair at an adult table, legs saw off to keep it from standing. Another was just a dark hallway with a single door open and the words "too late." He's already left carved into the floor. Each piece came with a date and a name. I didn't call anyone out. I didn't have to. The art spoke for itself. Alex helped with logistics, securing a venue, figuring out lighting, drafting invites. He had a friend named Yasmin who ran a boutique design studio, and she offered to help with the show branding. We called it the empty stand after the cake stand for my birthday. A symbol, a message. Yasmin loved it. It's haunting honest. People are going to talk about this. I hope so. And then came the harder part, the invitations. I didn't want to just post about the show on socials. I wanted to invite them directly. No hiding, no passive-aggressive subtweets. Just a clean, crisp invite with my name, the date, the location, and the title, The Empty Stand. A solo show by Mason Elliott? No explanation, no emotional plea, just the facts. I mailed it to my parents, Jenna, Liam, even Nick, because of course I did. I wanted him there too. Not out of malice, but because he was part of the story. Now the stand-in, the ghost in my seat. They had a choice, show up or stay away. And if they came, they'd get the message loud and clear. In the meantime, I kept building. The show was a month away, and I wanted it to be perfect. I recruited another friend of Alex's, Mara, a lighting designer, to help set the mood. Each room would be lit differently. The childhood section would be soft, warm light, slowly turning cooler and harsher as you walk deeper into the exhibit. The final room, bare bulbs, no warmth, just truth. We even added audio. Snippets of family conversations I'd recorded over the years. Quiet background noise you'd only catch if you stopped to listen. A voice saying, "He'll figure it out eventually." Laughter, a clink of glasses, my own voice barely audible saying, "Yeah, I'm fine." And the final track, me blowing out candles on nothing, just the sound of breath. We looped it. 2 weeks before the show, I saw Jenna again. It was at a cafe downtown. Total accident. She was in line behind me. I felt her presence before I heard her voice. "Mason." I turned slowly. She looked good as always, polished, confident blazer over a blouse like she'd stepped out of a Pinterest board. But her expression faltered when she saw me, like she hadn't expected me to look. "Okay." "Hey," I said calmly. "I got your invite." "Oh yeah. I didn't realize you were still doing art." "I never stopped." She nodded, fidgeting with her phone. "Is it like a real show with people?" "It's a solo exhibit. I curated it myself." Another nod. "Then Mom's been asking about it. She can come." Jenna shifted. "She's nervous." "She should be." I stepped aside as my order was ready. Black coffee, no sugar, and walked to the cream station. Jenna followed. "Is it about us?" "It's about me. But we're in it, right?" I looked her dead in the eyes. "You were always in it. You just didn't notice." She opened her mouth to reply, then stopped. Something flickered in her eyes. Shame. Maybe, maybe not. "I'll be there," she said quietly. "Good." She turned to leave, but then paused. "You look different." I smiled. That's the idea. The last week before the show was chaos. Final pieces, framed audio, tested lighting, calibrated. I barely slept, but I felt alive. Every brush stroke felt like a sentence I never got to say. Every shadow felt like a memory reclaimed. And when I finally stepped back the night before opening and looked at the full exhibit, I almost cried. Not because it was sad, because it was mine. All of it. The next day was the show, and by 6:15 p.m., people were already lining up outside. Friends from the art shop, customers, local artists, Alex's photographer friends, even my old manager from the bookstore came by. The space buzzed with conversation, camera flashes, soft gasps. people moved slowly through the rooms, reading the notes, standing in silence. Some cried, some stood for 10 minutes in front of a single piece, and then, at 7:02 p.m., they arrived. Mom, Dad, Jenna, Liam, even Nick. They looked nervous, out of place, like tourists in a country where they didn't speak the language. I didn't go to them, I just watched. They walked through the exhibit slowly. Mom stopped in front of a sketch titled Invisible Dinner, a table with one plate missing. Dad lingered at the bench, a memory from when he promised to come to my art fair and never showed up. Liam stared for a long time at a piece called Muted Applause, hands clapping in silence. The figure in the center with no mouth and Jenna. She froze in front of the empty stand. It was the centerpiece, a charcoal rendering of the birthday moment. Me standing in front of an empty cake stand, candles burning in midair, everyone else mid-laugh. The caption underneath simply said, "At least you tried." She didn't move for 5 minutes. When they finally left the exhibit, none of them said a word. Not to me, not to each other. They just walked out into the night, faces pale, shoulders heavy. I stood in the shadows and watched. Not smiling, not crying, just still. Because this wasn't the revenge, this was the mirror. They didn't say a word after the show. Not that night, not the next day, not the week after. I half expected them to lash out or at least defend themselves, something, anything. But there was nothing but silence. And that silence said more than any apology ever could. It told me that they'd seen it, that they'd felt it, and they didn't know how to respond because there was no defense. The mirror had been held up, and for once they didn't like their own reflection. But this wasn't over. The exhibit was just the reveal. My revenge, if you can even call it that, wasn't about embarrassing them. It was about freeing me, about removing their power. And now that I had it back, I could do what they never expected. Rewrite the story, mine theirs, all of it. It began with the will. What they didn't know, what I'd never told them, was that Grandpa Elliot had left something behind. Not money, exactly, but property, a cabin. He'd passed away 5 years ago, and everyone assumed the cabin had been sold with his other assets, but it hadn't. Grandpa had quietly transferred the deed to me before he died. Said I was the only one who ever truly listened to him. Said the others would just sell it off or use it for photo ops. It wasn't worth a fortune, just a small rundown place by a lake 2 hours out. But it was mine, a gift untouched, unclaimed, off their radar. I'd kept the deed in a box with my old sketchbooks and forgot about it for years. But now it was the key. I spent the next month fixing it up. Used every spare dollar I had, took weekend trips with Alex, hired local help when I needed it. We sanded floors, painted walls, rewired lighting. I even built a small studio space in the back with skylights for natural light. It became a sanctuary, quiet, still sacred. No laughter at my expense, no birthday jokes, just wind water and pencils against paper. Once it was finished, I filed for an LLC, Empty Stand Studios, and used the cabin as the legal address. It was symbolic, sure, but it was also practical, because now I had a business, a brand, a space to work, host, teach. And that's when I made my next move. I sent them another letter. Not a message, not a card, a formal envelope printed with the Empty Stand Studios logo addressed individually to each of them. Inside was a personalized invitation. You are cordially invited to attend the private unveiling of the Mirror Room, the final installation in the Empty Stand collection. This experience is by invitation only. No photography allowed, no plus once, no phones, date redacted, location provided upon RSVP confirmation. Please respond within 48 hours to secure your viewing time. Mason Elliott, founder, Empty Stand Studios. Jenna, RSVP. First within 20 minutes, then Mom, then Dad. Liam didn't reply. Instead, he called me. "Hey," he said, hesitant. "Do I need to RSVP formally, or can I just come?" "You're already on the list," I said. He let out a breath. "Cool. Just wanted to make sure." They didn't know what they were walking into. The Mirror Room wasn't a gallery piece. It was the lesson. I staggered the times, made sure they'd all arrive separately. First Jenna, then Dad, then Mom, Liam last. No distractions, no support system to lean on, just them in the room. It was a single space, one large mirror on each wall, a single chair in the center, and 4 speakers in the corners playing different audio loops. Real recordings, layered memories, carefully selected moments. Not yelling, not fights, just quiet, damaging lines, since they'd probably forgotten. "You're being too sensitive, Mason. Let your sister talk. He's still figuring things out. You'll never make a living off doodles." Each line played every few minutes, a pause in between. Just enough silence to think. On the floor, I'd painted a timeline. Each year marked important dates labeled. My graduation, my first gallery show, my birthday, their absences circled in red. And on the seat, the card. At least you tried. The original, the one from my birthday. Laminated, preserved. They each stayed longer than I expected. Jenna emerged first, pale, quiet. She didn't look at me, just said, "Thank you," and walked to her car. Her eyes were glassy. Her hands trembled slightly. Dad came next. He didn't speak. He just sat on the porch of the cabin for a long while. Eventually, he said, "You're a better man than I was at your age." I nodded. "That's not an apology," I said. "I know," he replied. "I'm still working on it." Mom came out crying. Not the dramatic kind, not the performative sobs, just slow tears, silent. She hugged me. I didn't hug back, but I didn't pull away either. "I thought I was helping you toughen up," she whispered. "I know. I didn't realize I was making you disappear." I said nothing. Liam came last. He walked into the room and didn't come out for over an hour. When he did, he looked changed. Not broken, just older, wiser. "I wish I'd said something back then," he said. "You still can." He looked me in the eye. "I'm proud of you." That one landed. After they all left, I sat in the mirror room alone. Let the words echo, let the silence stretch. Then I turned off the audio, packed the speakers, and closed the door. The show was over. That week, Jenna posted nothing. No photos, no stories, no humble brags. Mom took down all her family Facebook albums. Dad called once just to talk, no agenda. Liam came by the cabin a week later with burgers and a bottle of wine. We watched the lake in silence and talked about nothing. And for the first time in a long time, it felt okay. Not perfect, not healed, but true. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need validation. I had something better. My voice, my name, my place at the table when I built myself. And they would never forget it. Not after the empty stand, not after the mirror room, not after watching the son they overlooked become the man they couldn't ignore. Final line, they gave me a card that said, "At least you tried." And in the end, they were right. I did try, and I did it.